Hey guys, welcome back from that break. As I mentioned, it is time for the Squared Circle segment. And in the past, we've usually had our executive producer give us a breakdown as far as what's been going on with WWE and its recent pay per views, key matches, key feuds that are really gaining steam, that are really good, that are hitting and resonating with a lot of fans. But we're going to switch things up this time because there's a lot of more stuff that's been going on in the wrestling world than just the pay per views themselves. For those who have been following WWE recently, I'd say within the last 6 months, periodically, maybe even a little longer than that, and my executive producer can correct me, but roughly speaking, 6, 7, 8 months, there's been a lot of been going on. WWE has started to cut loose a lot of its talent. Key talent, by the way, that some of them are still capable of having great careers in wrestling, and others maybe they're retired, but they can still have a big impact on a lot of the wrestling world as it is right now. We'll talk about key people in particular as we get through the segment, but what we're going to talk about today is the fact that WWE is letting some of this key talent go, and whether you're a fan of this person or not, it's irrelevant. The fact of the matter is that WWE is letting these people go, and it seems lately that AEW has changed their position, which was that they were totally against scooping up any WWE talent. But now all of a sudden, that's changed within the last few months. They've been scooping up pretty much everyone that the WWE has recently let go of, more or less. Some have gone to other promotions, but most of them have headed to AEW. So we're going to talk. Eric and I are going to talk about that. We're going to talk about what in the world's going on. And Eric has even brought this up to me off the show, by the way, which is that there's rumors running wild that Vince might be looking to sell WWE. We'll talk about that. We're going to find out if there's any traction to that rumor, if it's just a theory, what's going on with that. We're going to talk about all this stuff because it's really cool. It's what's happening right now, and it's just a big pool of stuff that's happening, and I just feel that Eric and I are the most qualified because we're both wrestling aficionados to actually kind of help weed through some of this and figure out, what's going on, what's the game plan here for the WWE, and what's the goal for AEW, which seems like they're blossoming from it. So anyway, that long entrance aside, Eric, welcome back to the show, sir.
Thank you, Tim. Great to be back on to talk about one of the passions that I've had for just years and years is professional wrestling business, for sports entertainment in general, and watching it, as you know, participating in it a little bit after my post-college years, and just mainly just consuming the product, though, watching it, talking about it, and enjoying it.
Exactly.
So thanks for having me back.
Anytime. There's no one else that I would trust to have these conversations about wrestling with than you. You're the other guy who gets it just as much as I do. So let's just dive right on into it. So here's the deal. Recently, let's back up a little bit. There's been some more releases that have occurred within the last week or so. Let's backtrack a little bit further than that. We'll cover that, but let's backpedal a little bit further. Would you say, Eric, in your estimation, probably January, December of last year is when this
Right. I mean, when you look at the slew of releases just from this year alone, you're talking back January, but in particular, it seems like this summer, June. In particular, was when both of the releases happened, and you're not only talking just SmackDown, Raw. You're also talking some NXT talent has been let go, also.
Yes, and that you can cover that too. When Eric and I started noticing this trend, at first you could dismiss it as these guys' contracts are up. They're just trying to find a new place to go. But what I started noticing was roughly when Jake Roberts started to appear on AEW. He appeared, and he's in a managerial position. He's not wrestling, but he appears in a managerial position on AEW. Short time, less than probably 3 or 4 months later, Sting debuts in AEW in December of last year, which blew everybody away because everyone assumed, according to even Sting himself, his career was ended by Seth Rollins in 2015, Eric? 2015?
Correct. Yeah, it was at Night of the Champions event. A power bomb to the turnbuckle gone wrong. Injured his neck very, very badly.
So Sting shows up in AEW, unclear at first as to whether or not he's actually competing. Is he going to do a Jake Roberts thing? Is he going to get behind somebody, manage him? Is he going to start like he did in TNA, be a part of a stable like the Main Event Mafia? I mean, nobody really knew for sure what direction Sting was going. They just knew he was there. Shortly after Sting arrives in December, we come to find out, I'd say late January, early February, Paul White, Big Show, jumps ship and joins AEW. Not to compete. Now he's doing color commentary, I believe, on AEW's Dark Show, which is their dark AEW Dark. I keep thinking there's more to it than that. That's just what it's called, AEW Dark. So he's doing color commentary there. Then, so literally a handful of weeks after that, Mark Henry shows up in AEW. Now, I know what a lot of you guys who are watching this are thinking, well, those guys are either retired or they're on their way out. Big deal. Well, it gets to be a bigger deal. So who follows shortly after that, Eric, from WWE?
After that, we see the Big Show show up.
Yep.
And also Mark Henry.
Mm-hmm.
Which two giant names from WWE's past. Both of them are still capable of putting on, some programs with wrestlers. So, to the best of my knowledge, neither one of them have had a match yet.
No.
But I would love to see that. I mean, I'm a WWE guy. I've always been, always will be. But it's AEW is kind of starting to lure me in a little bit. I'm getting more and more interested. I've had to resist so far.
One of the big.
But I just
go ahead, Eric.
I don't think I can help it. I think I'm going to have to start watching AEW also.
Well, what's interesting too is shortly after Mark Henry and Big Show, one that really shocked everybody. No one really saw it coming. Rusev
right.
ended his
right.
career. They cut him loose. I think I would have to say Rusev was the first active, and I'm using quotations there. I know you can't see me. I'm using quotation. Active wrestlers that WWE let go. And short time, it was probably 3 weeks later, he shows up in AEW under the name Miro.
Right.
And then shortly after that begins the entourage of more and more talent that's being cut loose from WWE, and they end up showing up on AEW. So, and Eric, you were talking about NXT. Who from NXT has jumped ship now due to being let go?
Well, we saw Leo Rush show up over on AEW. Now, according to him, that match he had was like a one-off, and he's retired from professional wrestling now. Mm-hmm. But that was another shocker to see him show up so soon after a release.
Andrade, right?
They've also... I'm sorry?
Andrade? Wasn't he another NXT guy?
Yes. Well, Andrade, yes, he was NXT, but he did get called up to the main roster.
Okay. That's what I thought.
He was actually, I believe he was United States champion for a minute.
Okay, yeah.
But yeah, he was another one that showed up. Of course, he's Charlotte Flair's better half right now.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, you're talking, there's other people that I wouldn't be surprised if they just cut loose, like maybe Killian Dane.
Yep.
Fandango and Tyler Breeze have been cut loose.
Mm-hmm.
You're talking now bigger names. Now you're talking Braun Strowman.
That was a shocker.
That was a shocker. Yes, Aleister Black, Ruby Riott, Lana, Buddy Murphy, Velveteen Dream, Alexander Wolf, Daniel Bryan is also his contract has expired as well.
Well, while you're looking at this, let me just clarify it real quick. Now, the names that Eric's rattling off are people who have just recently been let go. They have not appeared on AEW or TNA or ROH or any of those, New Japan. They haven't appeared there yet. These guys have just recently, within the last 2 or 3 weeks, have been let go out of their contracts. But as you can hear, it's a long list.
Yeah. You got Kalisto, Bo Dallas, Wesley Blake, Mojo Rawley, And then, of course, Steve Cutler. And then there's been a whole lot of backstage releases. Still, I'm not going to name those people off because people don't know who they are. But,
sure.
I mean, there's a lot of behind-the-scenes people that have been cut and trimmed down as well. And most recently, people would probably know the name Sanjay Dutt. He wrestled for TNA. He was X Division champion. He wrestled for Jeff Jarrett in his Global Force Wrestling. And he was a producer backstage. And this is just, you're talking very recently, like I think it was yesterday or something. There were rumors about him being fired when they did that, announced that he had left on his own. So backstage trimmings, talent trimmings, all kinds of stuff happening.
So now as we dovetail a little bit, let's dovetail on that. Now that Eric kind of hit that on the head. So a lot of those talent, like we mentioned before, some of them have moved on. Others are still kind of waiting in the wings. They don't know where they're going to pop up at. And to clarify, too, back, I don't know, probably 10, 12 years ago, I don't know how true it is today because contracts are ever changing, but the old standard is that you were under contract with let's say you are under contract with WWE. Whether you're fired or whether you quit, whatever the circumstances are, there was, I think it was, 60 or 90 days, Eric, before you were allowed?
There's a 90.
Go ahead.
90 day no compete contract clause in there.
Right. Which basically, to translate for anyone who doesn't get it, means that you could not, it's not as if you could lose your job at WWE and then the next Tuesday show up at AEW or WCW. You couldn't do that. It was not allowed.
Right.
You had to wait that 90-day period, and then after that, you can go and do whatever you want to do. It was part of your contract. Now, I know, Eric, a lot of people have brought this up to me. They go, well, how does that apply to guys like Big Show and Mark Henry, who literally jumped ship like within a week or two after appearing on WWE? The issue.
And that's a great question. Great question. And the way that happens, the way that's allowed, is that their contract had expired with WWE. They worked to the term of their contract, and so their contract was finished. They didn't have another contract with WWE, so they were allowed to do what they wanted to do. A lot of times, when people are released from WWE, it's WWE releasing them from their contractual obligation, but because their contract was with WWE is not yet fulfilled, there was the 90-day no-compete clause takes effect.
Mm-hmm. So that's how that works for a lot of people who didn't know that. So now, putting all that out there for everyone to understand now. So now the big question is, what in the world is Vince doing? Rumors started flying crazy as soon as these releases were occurring, and then not only the releases, but everyone who was released, some of them jumping to AEW almost instantaneously. A lot of rumors started flying. Is Vince, one of two options are only possible, and Eric and I will talk about each one. One is Vince fixing to sell the WWE by cutting extra costs with certain stars who may not be worth the money and will not be appealing to a potential buyer? Could that be part of the reason he's cutting it? Potentially. We'll explore that here in a second. The other option is that he's looking to do what they call a rebrand or a relaunch or a reboot, whatever word you want to use. It's all basically the same idea, which is you cut a lot of the dead weight and you focus on the key stars that you do have that are drawing in the crowds. So, Eric, let's talk about option A, which is that the rumor of him possibly selling WWE. Do you believe, based on what you're seeing and hearing, do you think there's a lot of traction to that at this point, or do you think it's just rumor-based at this point?
At this point, I think it's just rumor-based. When this stuff first started happening, and I could see the backstage restructuring and almost the corporate restructuring, I kind of wondered what was going on. I entertained the idea that maybe he was getting ready to sell, but now that we step back and see the big picture, I don't think that that's going to be the case at all. I don't think that he's going to be selling. That's just my opinion.
Well, and the thing is, and I've talked to Eric about this, the problem is, with entertaining that option, is that who could Vince sell it to at this point anyway? At this point, you would think of people like Fox or ESPN. Well,
Yeah.
there's just one problem with that. Disney currently owns ESPN and Fox and a lot of other subsidiary sports related programming. So that would mean that Vince would have to sell the WWE to Disney, and though it would pique Disney's interest, I don't know that that would actually bear any fruit. I think Eric, you can expound on it a little better than I can. Back in early WCW days, there was a little bit of a partnership between Disney and WCW, where they had their, was it Nitro or was it Thunder that they had at Disney Studios?
It was actually Nitro, but they had it at Universal Studios.
Oh, okay.
That was at Universal Studios. But you got to remember too that that was possible because Ted Turner owned WCW, and he also owned Time Warner, mm-hmm. which owned America Online, and I believe at that time they had he either owned or they had a relationship with Universal. So that would explain that.
Okay. So to piggyback, like what I was saying, so either way, it's been done in the past to a similar degree. Now, I'm not saying that Universal owned WCW, not that. There's been a relationship similar to that in the past, but nothing ever really came of it. You know, you never heard Universal buying WCW from Ted Warner or anybody, or Ted Turner, I'm sorry, Ted Turner. Never heard that. So the idea that Disney would be interested in buying WWE at this point, I don't think it's a likely scenario. And so you take Disney out of the equation, who's really left in the marketplace that would be interested in buying a wrestling promotion? And the reality is, as far as people who have money, not really a lot of people are out there that would be willing to take the chance.
That's right. The only maybe independent person I could think of that has offered to buy it would be that Saudi prince. And I don't think that would be a good idea for the wrestling business at all, for many reasons. Mm-hmm. But for one, just because of the hard logistics of trying to run everything from there and from here. I just don't see that working out very well at all.
I'm not sure I do either, but basically I agree with that scenario. It would take something along those lines. An Elon Musk guy, you know, someone who's got money, essentially a modern day Ted Turner, more or less, would be about the only person that Vince could look to sell it. And there's really not anyone out there who well, I take it back. There are people out there who have that kind of money, but are choosing not to go down that route as far as buying WWE. So I don't think selling the company is really a viable theory. It's not bad. I mean, it's not impossible. But I agree with Eric, I don't think it has a lot of traction behind it. So let's jump to option B, Eric, which is what we were talking about, the rebooting or rebranding of the WWE. You go ahead and expound on it, and I'll jump in a little bit when I can.
Right, well, to expound on that, actually, very recently I just read an article from What Culture, which is one of my sources that I like to go to. The guy's very good. They have a lot of very good inside sources, so they're pretty reliable when it comes to predicting things.
Yeah.
And they're saying that what's going on too is that Vince is kind of done with the smaller guys, the cruiserweight. Mm-hmm. Like so, 205 Live is going to be done. Mm-hmm. And what he's wanting to do is get guys that are at least 220 pounds or more. Mm-hmm. And he's wanting to fill the roster with that. And from what I can gather, also, the people that he let go were people that he felt just weren't performing up to snuff, or that they just didn't have any, the creative team had no idea what to do with them, and they weren't going to be utilized in any way or fashion, so he just kind of cut his losses with the talent there, and is going to be, from what I understand, some people are going to be coming up from NXT to fill those spots, and then that'll open up more spots in NXT for future talent. And then two of the names they mentioned were Karrion Kross and Bronson Reed in particular.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense.
So I think that what we're going to see is maybe kind of a tweaking of the programming, because I mean, let's be honest, it's been absolutely horrible and hard to watch, especially Monday Night Raw, which is their flagship program. But it's just been really hard to watch over the past months.
At this point, too, it sounds to me, Eric, what he's trying to do, and this is kind of just to add a little structure to your theory, it sounds like he's trying to go back to the 80s, in a sense. Because for those who remember WWE or WWF, I'm going to say it, I don't care, sue me if you want, I don't care, it was WWF back in the day, period. I don't care what anyone says. Back in the early days. Exactly. So back then, during that time, we're talking like Hulk Hogan, Ultimate Warrior, Sergeant Slaughter, Rick Rude, DiBiase, all those guys.
Macho Man Randy Savage.
I'm wearing my Macho Man shirt, by the way, since you brought him up. But yeah, Savage too. Those guys. There were no cruiserweight, lightweight guys back then. You had, the closest you had were guys like Bret Hart when he was part of the Hart Foundation. But he was a tag, but it was a tag team situation. You had the Rockers, Marty Jannetty, Shawn Michaels. That was the closest you got to cruiserweight-ish kind of wrestling. Otherwise, it was still very much powerhouse. Shawn and Jannetty basically still did powerhouse moves, but they just did more high flying in their matches. That's what set them apart. With the Anvil and the Hitman, it was more tactical, but it was still very much powerhouse. Bret did more of the technical style wrestling, the methodology of a match. Anvil was just the punch, the fist of the team, the powerhouse. Kind of similar to like what Legion of Doom was. Hawk was the real hard worker. Animal was just the powerhouse, the guy you sent in there just to the Hulk smash kind of situation. Get in there and smash, Hawk, Animal smash, and he would beat the guys up. But Hawk was the one doing drop kicks and clotheslines and all that stuff. So you had those guys performing like that, but these were still heavyweight guys. So it seems to me what you're hinting at, Eric, and I think you might not be too far off base, is that Vince is looking to kind of recapture what worked then and hoping that it would work now.
Right. But the only way it's going to work is if somehow the creative and writing staff gets mixed up some, because of what's getting served up to us now leaves a bad taste in my mouth.
Right. Well, let's since you brought it up, let's talk about that too a little bit, because that's going to play a factor in this option B too. The story writing. Back in the day, and Eric and I have talked about this numerous times. Now, things were different back in the 80s and 90s. You had Royal Rumble, you might have had King of the Ring, or no, you had Royal Rumble, WrestleMania, King of the Ring, SummerSlam, and then a Survivor Series at the end of the year. That was it. You had a very limited pay-per-view matches, and you had months to really do a feud right. When you look at, for instance, I'll bring it up because it's fresh. I just saw it yesterday, Eric, by the way. Macho King versus the Ultimate Warrior. That feud started shortly before Royal Rumble, before Warrior took on Sergeant Slaughter at Royal Rumble. It started a little bit before that, but it's basically started at the Rumble, and it trickled all the way into WrestleMania, where they had their match at WrestleMania 7. Which was great. It was a historic match, but they were able to build it up. They had, they didn't have Raw and SmackDown back then. They had WWF Superstars and Saturday Night's Main Event. That was mainly their two shows that they could put their superstars on at the time. But you could do your feuds there. They had like Piper's Pit, where you could go on their show. What was it? The Barber Shop with Brutus Beefcake. You could go on there, really sell your feud. That's what Shawn Michaels did with Marty Jannetty. He went on the Barber Shop, and that's where their feud started. He threw Jannetty through the glass. A lot of people still remember that to this day. It was intense. It was crazy. But that's what you could do. You could start the feud there. You could even drag it a little bit, not to the point where it's dull, but really take your time and build up a match. That's the difference. Nowadays, you look at the writing and the storylines, and We'll talk about the storylines in a minute. But when you look at how the build-up, I'm talking just the build-up at the moment. The build-up is too quick, in my opinion. It's too quick. You know,
right.
I'm just gonna throw this feud doesn't exist. I'm just making it up. Seth Rollins versus Daniel Bryan. Literally, they'll have a match this past Monday night. They're already set to be in a pay-per-view match next week. You just started fighting less than 7 days ago. You know, what kind of story are you trying to tell here? And I think that's that's the thing. And I'll let Eric talk about the story part of it here in a second. But I think that's a part of the thing that we've lost. Is back in the 80s and 90s, you could tell a story, and it would last months, and you could tell it good. Nowadays, you don't have the time, and the story's just not as good. Go ahead, Eric.
All right, just to add on to what you just said there, I think part of the problem, too, is maybe all of the focus on the live broadcast. Every week, you know, the writers have to work every week to come up with fresh material, whereas back then, everything was pre-taped.
Yep.
And I remember I went to a WWE Superstar show back in like 1995 or 96. Diesel was the champion at the time, whenever that was. And they taped a whole month's worth of shows at that live event. So that's a whole month worth of stuff. The story flowed so much better because it was all written out and played out right there. But, you know, every week now they do a live show, so everything, you know, somebody between Monday and Monday, somebody comes up with an idea that they think is good, and it's a stinker, and then it just plays out. But anyways, that's neither here nor there. I just wanted to add that on there.
No, I agree with you, but that's the point. The story. You got two parts of what I believe is a form. Let's talk about the formula of a match. And Eric's got a little more experience with that, and he can correct me. But based on what I've seen growing up, a formula to a match. You've got two guys, typically a hero and a bad guy, or a baby face and a heel. That's usually the scenario. So you got that. That's part one. Part two is the build-up. Well, no, I take it back. Part two is the story. You're going to tell a story between the good guy and the bad guy, whatever that might be. I give you a good example of it is when Slaughter defeated the Warrior, became champion. He started a feud with Hulk. But at the time, Slaughter was an Iraqi sympathizer during Desert Storm. So they kind of brought the real world into wrestling, which was also very cool. They brought what's going on in the world into wrestling, which is real. I mean, you can't get much realer than that. But they added it as part of the story. You got Slaughter, who was basically a traitor. He's an Iraqi supporter. And here comes Hulk Hogan, who won the Royal Rumble, earned the right to take on Slaughter at WrestleMania. Again, spaced out the pay-per-views. He had time to build up the match here. So you're going to tell the story. Hogan wants to get rid of this guy because he's the champion. He's a bad guy. He needs to take the title back. So there's your story that they're going to tell. How is Hogan going to get the belt at WrestleMania against Slaughter? That's the story we're going to tell. The build-up is what takes place between Royal Rumble and WrestleMania, which means Hogan's going to get a few punches in on Slaughter, which fans are going to go nuts for. All right, he's definitely going to win the belt come Mania, man. I can't wait. 8 more weeks, and we're going to see them really duke it out. And then the other side of that is, and Eric will tell you, the bad guy also has to get a few licks in somehow, which is either he attacks Hogan in the locker room or he just badmouths him on the microphone, whatever the scenario is. The bad guy's got to get his licks in too, which is, oh man, I can't wait for Slaughter to get his butt reared. And he snuck up behind Hogan and beat him up in the locker room. That's crazy. That's garbage. That makes me mad. I can't wait till WrestleMania where he beats him up. Again, you got the two characters. You got the story you're about to tell. You're building it up, which means the build-up has always included the fans and their reactions. You want the fans emotionally invested as much as they can. And then finally, you tell the story, which is the match itself, which was Hogan versus Slaughter at WrestleMania, which was one of a great match. So, is there anything I left out of that formula there, or would you agree that's basically it?
No, yeah, you gotta do that build up. You gotta do the anticipation.
Yeah.
We gotta let the bad guy get his licks in. That way, the fans hate him even more. He gets a lot of heat.
Exactly. The back and forth. That's what really builds up a match. Hogan, as for every lick that he gets in, Slaughter should have gotten a lick in as well, and he did. That's what really can sell people on a match. That's where people are like, oh, dude, they're going to fight at WrestleMania? They're going back and forth. This is insane. I can't wait to see what happens. This is I got to see what's going to shake out. I don't know.
Yeah. It's the writer's job to make you, to give you a story that you want to see how it ends. Mm-hmm. You gotta keep tuning in to see what's going to happen. I've heard people say it's like a soap opera for guys, and I mean that's a pretty good way to explain it.
It's the best way I would describe it. Yeah.
Yeah, you gotta find out what happens. You gotta see how this story ends.
And that's what. And the storytelling is, like I said, is just part of the whole formula. There's a whole formula to it. And WWE or F, whatever, they used to have an understanding of that. Now, somewhere, I'd say probably post-Attitude Era, that started to change a little bit. Their attitude began to change, where they, instead of having the time to really apply that formula, they kind of sped it up and they took parts out or speeded up certain parts, which is when fans started to get kind of bleh about it. You think about when Cena had his multiple championship reigns. People were getting sick of it. People were starting to tune out. Oh, I'm tired of seeing Cena as champion. It's boring. Especially when he was having his feud with Orton, when it was constantly back and forth. If you're going to do a match with like that, where the heel and the good and the babyface are going to duke it out for a year, it's rough. But if you do it right, it can work. But if you don't do it right, it's going to be like being fed gruel every single time you sit down for a helping. It just gets old after a while, and you're not interested anymore. Yeah,
and that's, for me right now, that's what I'm feeling with McIntyre versus Lashley.
Right.
That's getting super old. Like, how many times are we going to... When can Lashley just move on from McIntyre and face his next challenge to develop his character, to even more legitimize him as the WWE champion?
Exactly. So that's the biggest problem. So, okay, so now we've kind of, Eric and I have kind of just given you a lengthy but Reader's Digest version of what we think WWE's issues are and why they're looking to rebrand the situation, reboot, whatever word, relaunch, whatever word you want to use. So I agree with Eric. I think most likely that is what's going to play out more than Vince probably selling the company. So now let's switch gears to this AEW situation, which is, why are so many of these stars who have gotten cut going to AEW? What separates AEW from WWE? Now, Eric and I will both tell you, because we both heard the interview. When AEW first launched, Chris Jericho said openly, without any doubt in his voice, that they were not interested in taking any talent from WWE, whether the person was currently active or their contract was looking to expire. They were not interested in getting these guys on their show. Now, a year or two later after AEW has launched, that attitude has changed. So, Eric, in your opinion, what has caused AEW to revisit that statement and change their mind?
Well, I mean, if you don't take any talent from a competition that lets their talent go and use them, somebody else is just going to pick them up.
True.
So, and then if your roster doesn't grow, it's going to grow stagnant and stale. There's only so much you can do with what you got. But if you keep bringing new things in, there's freshness to it. There's a buzz about it, and especially when they sign like Sting and the Big Show, that gets people talking about AEW. I mean, not that Chris Jericho and Kenny Omega and Cody Rhodes, not that those aren't big names in and of themselves, but when you start to bring in other talent like that was let go by the quote unquote number one guys in the business, and you bring them in, and they have even more phenomenal matches than they had over there in your company, Well, that's just getting your name out there and getting your name brought up even more. You're going to get more people tuning in. You're going to get more people buying your pay-per-views. And that is essentially, the love of the business. I'm sure all these guys love the business. They love what they do. They love the entertainment. At the end of the day, you got to make that bottom line. You got to end your year, your fiscal year, in the black and not the red.
Exactly. And I'll piggyback on this. By the way, I just thought another one popped in my mind as Eric was talking. Christian is another one who jumped ship, and he's actually pursuing a career in AEW and doing really well. Matt Hardy, another one. But anyway, just to throw those two out there, it just came to my mind.
Absolutely. Yes.
But what I like about AEW, and Eric can back me up on it, is that what makes it interesting, okay? I'll use this as an example because it's going on right now. Sting has essentially teamed up with Darby Allin. Now, who's Darby Allin? Well, Darby Allin kind of has a similar gimmick to Sting's, more or less. It's a dark, unknown kind of character. But it's not evil or morbid or anything. It's just, it's a different take on the character. He's a skateboarding, painted up, kind of punk rock kind of guy. But what's cool is Sting has teamed up with him. And now Sting and him are doing stuff together. Not versing each other per se, but they're having competitions with other wrestlers and stuff. But Sting is basically, from what I've seen, is kind of mentoring Darby Allin by showing him, this is how we're going to do things. This is what's going to make this match or this feud really good. He's come alongside him and he's working with him. You look at, who is the guy that Jake Roberts is currently managing, Eric? I can't remember his name.
Boy, you got me at a loss right there. I can't remember.
I forget the guy's name. He's a fresh face, though. It'll probably come to me later. I'll kick myself later. Anyway, Jake Roberts is mentoring this guy in a managerial position. But my point is, you've got these veterans who, instead of coming to a new promotion and looking out for themselves and saying, I want to be the world's champion, I want to be the 16-time world champion of AEW or whatever the case is. That's not what's going on here. These guys are actually coming in, taking the young guys, the guys who are a lot younger than them, probably 20, 30 years younger, they're sophomore, whatever. They're coming alongside these guys, and then they're not interested in title matches or being, the world's champion of that promotion. They just want to come in and either end their career on a high note or help promote or boost a new up-and-coming talent and help them have multiple championship reigns. And I think that factor is something that AEW is doing really well.
I would have to agree with you there. They're doing a very good job right now. I'm just hoping that it doesn't turn into what happened at WCW in the early 2000s. Well,
and the biggest thing, for those who remember that, with WCW...
And by the way, not to cut you off, Lance Archer.
There it is, Lance. I knew it started with an L. I didn't want to say wrong. Lance Archer. Very good.
Okay, sorry about that.
No, it's okay.
It popped in my head because it was bothering me. But
right.
Okay.
See, it was me too. I knew it, and that's what was bothering me. I knew it started with an L, but I'm like, I don't want to misspoke. Lance Archer. But still, okay. But what I think is what is interesting here is like I said, there's this mentorship going on. What happened with WCW, though, and what major issues with them, especially towards their decline, was there was no control, essentially. And you watch any documentary you want to, the Monday Night Wars. Eric has seen some Kevin Nash solo interviews. He said it himself. They're back in the back with the story, the writers and stuff. It was a free for all. In fact, a lot of the wrestlers even stated that they had no idea what they were doing until they arrived at the arena. They didn't know who they were fighting that night and why. Oh, I'm up for a title match tonight? Why? I don't remember having a number one contenders match. I did? Oh, okay. So then you got to go find, whoever it is, Diamond Dallas Page, and say, hey, I just found out. I just got here at the arena. I guess we're fighting tonight? Okay, well, what do you want to do?
Hey, guess what? You're jobbing to David Arquette tonight.
Right. That's exactly my point. And then the other issue, right, exactly. The other issue, too, so aside from just being like a free-for-all there, you've got a lot of the bigger talent having what they call creative control, which basically means, for those who don't understand wrestling in that regard, creative control basically allows a superstar. So let's say, for example, Hulk Hogan was to, I'm going to use you, Eric, was going to have a match with Eric for the title. Hulk Hogan can come up to the writers and go, no, I'm not feeling that. I want to wrestle TJ instead. Really? Yeah, that's who I'm fighting tonight. Okay, that's what you want. And that's how it went. And that was a big issue because here you got your writers, if they're able to come up with a good story for you to get involved with. But if you don't like who the story's involving, you go to your contract and you pull out the creative control card and go, no, we're 86ing that. We're not doing it. And then, well, the writer's like, well, crap. Now we're back to square. Well, what do you want to do? And there's where chaos ensues. Because then, like Eric said, you end up having a feud with David Arquette. Like, well, what the heck's that got to do with anything?
Yep. Yeah, with train wreck. That's all it was a train wreck. Yeah.
Now I don't have it on good authority, but I think I can feel about 80% okay with saying that I don't believe any of the AEW superstars have any kind of creative control. Cody Rhodes, when he launched this with Tony Khan, made it very clear that they wanted to be a very separate, unique entity, meaning they didn't want to repeat, as Eric brought up about WCW, didn't want to repeat the mistakes of the past. Cody Rhodes, for those who unless you've been living under a rock, father was Dusty Rhodes, who was very active in WCW from its early days to right before it ended. So Cody's very much aware of what happened in WCW. And if he never really competed, but he can easily go ask his brother. You talk about that, Eric. You talk about Dustin Rhodes going to WCW and performing as Seven, a weird-looking version of Uncle Fester.
Yeah.
What was that about?
A lot of their characters were just totally off the wall crazy.
So I mean,
there's so many, like Oz, the Great and Powerful.
Yes.
You had Master Blasters that really didn't make any sense.
No, goofy stuff like that. So Cody and Dustin are very much aware of what not to do because Dustin lived it and Cody was aware of it through his father.
Yeah.
So they're very much aware of the pitfalls that took on WCW. So they have that as an edge, which is why I said I feel about 80% confident in saying that as far as creative control or their contracts go, I don't really think that those are an option. I have to say, from what I've seen of AEW, I don't really see that being an issue. Their matches are always different. They're always changing. The title has changed hands from Jericho to Jon Moxley to Kenny Omega right now. So, I mean, it's gone to several different guys. I mean, it's not like Jericho's held on to the title for the last 5 years or anything crazy or use some kind of creative control to grab the title back, which is nice of Jericho because he can actually develop his own feuds and actually take his time and not feel like the weight of the world is on his shoulders. So it's actually really, that's why I feel AEW is a much better organization. They have, I think the bottom line, Eric, and you can chime in, I think they have a lot better structure, or at least it seems to be a lot better structured.
Right, their structure is better, and they actually provide health insurance to the talent, and the travel. Well, I mean, pre-pandemic wasn't as bad on those guys.
No, they rarely went too far.
And I think that what you're seeing is the result of a better managed company. So you get happier talent, which it's just like any other place. If you're there and you're happy, you're going to be more productive and you're going to give more back.
Exactly.
As if you're just there and you showed up, you hate your job, and I can't wait till this is over and get done. Kind of thing. Because a lot of people don't. I don't know. A lot of people may know this, maybe they don't. But the wrestlers in WWE are all considered independent contractors. So they're pretty much responsible for everything. Their own travel, their own hotel rooms. If they get hurt wrestling, there is a company doctor, but WWE may or may not cover the medical bills. So they got to find their own medical insurance, all that stuff.
Yeah, I think it was I think it was the Broken Skull segment, and I'm going to bring this up before you and I wrap up this segment here. Um, Stone Cold was having Kurt Angle on, and Kurt Angle was getting to the point where he felt like he was getting abused in the company as far as, not getting any time off. He's running himself ragged. And he even admitted he was taking a lot of drugs to just be able to compete each night. And I believe he got so injured in a match that he showed up to Stamford, to the headquarters. Vince was in a meeting with all his executives. Kurt Angle storms into the meeting, drops his pants down, and shows this massive, ugly looking bruise that went from his inner thigh down to like his knee and even a little below that he sustained. It was nasty looking from what he said. And after he dropped his pants, he looked over at Vince. He goes, "Can we talk now?"
I hadn't heard that story. That's a good one.
You'd have to watch that segment, that Broken Skull segment. You would enjoy that. But Kurt Angle's point was that he was running himself ragged. He was taking pills to keep going, and he even realized, hey, I'm reaching my limit here, man. I can't keep doing this. So I think by treating like Eric said, you're treating your employees right. That's what keeps people. That's maintains your longevity. That keeps your popularity. That if the workers are happy, they'll do anything you ask them to do. Well, within reason, but
right.
They'll do anything you pretty much ask of them to do because they're content with where they are. They're being taken care of, and that's the biggest thing. So, the final question I guess we got to ask before before I switch topics for you, Eric, and talk about Backbreaker. So the biggest question is, what do we see happening as far as let's say the next 6 months? We'll keep it simple. The next 6 months for AEW and WWE. What do you, in your mind, Eric, what are you predicting was going to happen here?
Well, with AEW, I expect them to pick up some of the talent that has been shed from WWE. I expect you'll probably see Braun Strowman head over there, and if I had to guess, I would say Aleister Black, Lana.
Well, her husband's there, so that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. And I think you'll see some go to Impact.
Probably.
I think that you'll see probably Killian Dane might go to Impact. You'll see these guys just go to various other places, maybe New Japan or things of that nature. So I see AEW picking those guys up, and I see them getting it right with them, and I see them having some phenomenal shows, great matches with those guys. With WWE, I think you're going to see like you said, a retooling, a rebranding, a tweaking of the product, and hopefully they'll address the writing issue and the creative issue, and maybe they'll be able to fix their product to where it's a little more presentable for, the seasoned wrestling fans, which is pretty much who watches it right now, because I don't know of anybody else that hasn't already watched it that talks to me about it and says that they watch it and like what they're seeing. So hopefully they listen to the fans and they retool that, tweak it, and start to give us some meaningful and entertaining product to consume.
All right, well, let's leave it there. Now, as far as what we're going to talk about next is I'm going to let Eric talk about our most recent show, which was we were fortunate to have Sean Spinks and Lynn Spinks on, which they are both the co-owners of Backbreaker Wrestling. And Backbreaker Wrestling put on their first show since the pandemic, and Eric and his better half and his little one were able to attend. So Eric, give us the lowdown about Backbreaker and their most recent event. Tell us a little bit about it before you go.
Right. Well, yeah, I wasn't too familiar with them beforehand. Like I was going to check them out before the pandemic. I had tickets to their event, but then the pandemic hit, got postponed, and now they're back.
Yep. And
so I wasn't sure what to expect because I hadn't seen anything, or I didn't really know a whole lot about it other than Lynn and Sean were great people, and that's all I knew. So we went, and boy, I'm going to tell you what, we were blown away. For my money, if this was on the local access TV or whatever, I'd probably watch this every week over WWE.
There you go.
It was my daughter's first wrestling show, and she was on the edge of her seat screaming at the guys. It reminded me of me and you going to the Hammond Civic Center watching the stuff together.
Sounds like just like her daddy. But anyway, go ahead.
But so yeah, so she loved it. Got to talk to Lynn a little bit, and Lily got her first Backbreaker Wrestling T-shirt, which she's sporting around nonstop.
Mm-hmm.
I had two favorite matches of the night there. First match that I really enjoyed. I enjoyed the whole night, so it was really hard to pick out these two matches.
Mm-hmm.
But these two just kind of stuck out at me most. Was the heavyweight championship match. The Backbreaker Wrestling heavyweight champion Drex Odell was taking on Richie Rothschild, and two bigger guys, heavyweights going at it, and the back and forth, because you're in a small place, you can hear the back and forth banter.
Yep.
The heel, of course, turns to the crowd and taunts us, and it's a great match altogether. And then the end of the match, the finish, ended with a Richie Rothschild low blow Drex Odell. So he made you not like the guy even more, and that's just even more of a build up for a rematch that may or may not happen very soon, but I hope it does. So I thought that was great, building up like we were talking about like anticipation towards a giant match,
Right.
And the other match was the main event for the night, which featured the Legacy champion Dick Davis taking on Public Enemy Eric Dillinger, and oh man, that was just a high impact match. The guys, the moves and the way that they sold each other's moves were just phenomenal. Eric Dillinger got opened up a little bit. There was some blood, which people like it. They don't like it. I think it was obviously wasn't intentional, but it just added to the realness of the match, and it just sucked you right in. And both of those guys were fantastic. And the heel faction in Backbreaker is called the Upper Class, and there's 6, 7 of them. They all came out, stormed the ring, and beat up Eric Dillinger. Dick Davis came in to help him out, and then Excalibur and Jake Roan came out to help out. And boy, the way it ended, they were all in the ring, everybody holding their hands up, reminiscent of the curtain call. What a way to end, because that was the main event. What a way to end the night. My hat's off to Lynn and Sean. What a great show they put on, and we're really looking forward to their next show. The show name is called Hot Slash, and it's going to be July 17th at Hildebrand Hall in Griffith. I know that tomorrow we're going to head on over to Creative Comics. I'm going to pick up my books, and we're going to purchase tickets for this show. So we will be in attendance at this show as well. If anybody out there is listening to this, I will be there. If you guys want to pop by, say hi. Wouldn't hurt my feelings. And we just we're really looking forward to Backbreaker Wrestling. It's going to be our new monthly thing, I think, or bi-monthly when they start doing it bi-monthly. I just see us going to every single show, and hoping maybe one of these shows you'll be off so you can come with me.
If we can work it so that they have one on the weekend that I'm off, I'd be all for it. You know that. So.
Absolutely. I'd love to have you there with me, cuz.
I know. I'd love to go. Unfortunately, it seems like every time they have an event, it's my weekend to work. So we'll see. Maybe in the next couple of months that might change. But all right, guys, that's been the wrestling segment, our Squared Circle segment with our executive producer Eric Bevell. He always does a bang-up job, not only doing this segment of the show, but he also does a great job booking us guests from time to time, people he comes across on his walks and byways and highways of life. It's always great having him join us and talk about this stuff. Like I said, just wanted to mix things up with his segment today. I just thought there was some more cool stuff he and I can talk about besides just recapping some pay-per-views, which is not a bad thing. But, there's always a lot more to wrestling than just recapping a pay-per-view. So, anyway, I'm glad you guys enjoyed it. We'll have Eric again on probably sometime in either late July or early August. We'll talk with him again. And we'll start to see if his theory is correct, if more WWE talent has migrated its way to AEW. In the meantime, though, thank you, Eric, for joining us. I appreciate you coming on. You know that.
Thank you, cuz. Look forward to just keep talking about wrestling with you, just like we always do.
Every time. So, guys, with that being said, don't go anywhere. There's a lot more to this show. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.